Um, Phillip Perry's been with Jamesway 10 plus years or so. It's over 20, 25 years, I think, experience managing hatcheries. So a lot of experience in different areas of the industry. And this is something that he's dealt with in the past of what we do with our holidays coming up. So for that, I will go ahead and let Phillip take over here and share his screen, and then get on with the presentation. And then any questions you have, just type them out and we'll get to them when we can.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to be back on. I was on a couple of weeks ago with the other group of consultants and sales, and so it's always good to talk to you all, and I hope I can share some information that'll be beneficial to you. So we're going to look at some of the things that we prepare for this time of year for holidays. I know a lot of family gatherings, things like that's happening with you and with also your staff. So we'll be taking a look at what's coming up, what we need to prepare for, how do we handle some of the personnel needs, requests. I know we got a lot of things like that, and how do we accommodate our employees? Many countries will have a time change, and how do we adjust our set times, and we'll take a look at that. We'll also look at skipped or partial settings. I know visiting hatcheries, a lot of you now are skipping sets and also making partial sets, either because you don't have enough eggs or just the flow of eggs right now this time of year can slow down. And also, not only do we have to prepare for the hatchery, but also our processing plants. They'll want us to sort of move around some of our sets to accommodate them over the holidays. And we'll talk about excessive eggs resulting in increased egg age and what we should do about that. We'll talk some about our Spies Machine and things as we come up with. So with that, I'll just first thing I like to look at is the time change. Most areas in Europe and North America observe daylight savings time. Most areas in Africa and Asia do not, but there's also a lot of, some of you are falling back during this time change. Some of you are falling forward. So for those in looking at for the North America, chickens 3 weeks prior, if you want to continue to have your pull time remain the same 3 weeks prior, which will begin next week, October 11th, you'll set 1 hour later. And then once you get to November 1st, then you'll resume your normal set time after November 1st. This way, if say you're pulling at 6 a.m. right now, if you make this adjustment, it'll keep things moving just as it has, and all your adjustments, everything should be right on time. For turkeys and ducks, it's 4 weeks, so we should have started this week on Monday and Tuesday, beginning the week of October 4th, and then you'll set 1 hour later, and then resume your normal set time after November 1st. So these are a couple of the beginning for falling back, getting your set time on time, and to remain on track, and you don't have to adjust your employees coming in to pull, hatch, or things like that. So these are the times. For multi-stage, we'll talk a little bit more about that. With this hour difference, it may not affect it that much as far as your crossbar temps, but as always, you want to run your machine according to that crossbar temp, whether you do that by setting your eggs either earlier or later, or also if you do it by temperature adjustment. For your HatchCom time adjustment, the HatchCom works off of your PC that it's on. So it'll send the change time to your Platinum and your Sentry, if you still have ACI displays, whenever the PC time changes. This is also an important feature to know, because I've had hatcheries that all their set times and on their single stage incubation just went haywire, and they're trying to get everything rearranged, and it's often a time on the PC got changed, whether inadvertently or the machine or the PC itself is older and it just changed on its own. So Y2K there, I guess. But you know, that will send the change to your Platinums and to your Century displays. If you don't have Hatchcom and you still have single stage incubation, it'll need to be changed manually. An easy way to do that is on an Ethernet network, the lowest numbered incubator will synchronize the clocks at the bottom of the hour. And on ACI networks, the master display does this. So if you change it, you can do it by just going to your lowest number incubator if you don't have Hatchcom on a computer. So just some things. I know myself, Ronald, Rojas, we get a lot of calls this time of year about how this is going to affect. So this is how your time will be set up on your single stage incubation with Hatchcom. I want to talk a little bit about multi-stage. We'll also be talking about single stage incubation, but some of our skip sets coming up in partial setting. As you know, Jamesway's multi-stage incubators rely on embryo heat to establish an optimum energy balance inside the machine. Any disruption of this balance results in lost heat and a need for compensation. So when we remove a set of eggs or a skip set, then we have to make up for that and to compensate for that to keep the rest of the machine in balance as best we can. In general, a partial setting or skipping a set is not recommended, but sometimes this becomes unavoidable, as you all know, talking about the holidays and where we're headed in that way. So with multi-stage, talking about skip setting, you'll go ahead and place your incubator racks in the incubator in position 1 beneath the fans in the usual manner. So they won't have eggs in them, but you just go ahead and run that rack right on through that machine as if it had a rack of eggs in it, and it just pushes on through. The empty rack is treated as if it were full and loaded in the incubator accordingly. And to help compensate for the loss of embryonic heat, the following set should be loaded 2 hours earlier than normal. This is in your manual, one of the ways we compensate for this. And then also, I have another guideline to look at for partial and skip. This was put together by Taylor Steele, and it works real well. And I have sort of promoted this in some of my other multi-stage presentations, but the goal is to maintain 100.3 with a 98.8 set point at your crossbar. Temperature is always taken 24 hours after set. So there's no temperature changes until your empty skip buggy moves into the 4th position. So if you're running 98.8, you would run that all the way through, no changes until that 4th reaches that empty buggy reaches this 4th position, and then you would increase your temperature to 99 degrees, or if you're running another temperature by 0.2 degrees at set. This will help with your balance, temperature balance, and when this empty buggy moves into your 5th position, you would increase the temperature by 1/10, 99.1. When you make that set, and these are pushed in the 5th, then you raise your temperature to 99.1. And then as this skip buggy moves into your 6th position, there's no changes needed. So you would hold 99.1. And then after the machine is full, when this empty buggy's out, you make your other set, you got 6 full positions, you're gonna drop your temperature by 0.2 down to 98.9, and then adjust as needed at your crossbar reading. So you'll continue to monitor your crossbar temp until the machine is stabilized. So this is how another method for maintaining a skip set and not having much interference with your heat loss whenever you take out your incubator, so to speak. When you take out those eggs with the heat in them, this will keep you at a more even temperature. Then you'll just adjust your set points as needed, and by monitoring the crossbar. So once your crossbar starts to come back up, it starts to read a little higher, whatever, you'll go back to your 98.8 set point, and then you can adjust from there on. So that's how we manage our multi-stage. Okay, so what do we do about single stage skip setting? This is pretty difficult. Uh, what you do is nothing. So when you skip a single stage, because we're not relying on other eggs or anything, there's nothing to do. You just set it the next day or whatever. There may be some adjustment to set times, you know, if your eggs have developed some age, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that further along in the presentation. But that is one of the benefits of single stage incubation is when you have a skip set, we'll just move on from it. So we're going to move on to multi-stage. We'll talk about partial setting, and we'll talk about single stage partial setting because I know some of you do that. We arrange our two racks that are going on the left and right side in the egg room as we tray our eggs. So we would fill the racks like this when they're side to side until we get them balanced. This will give us a balanced side to side. And it's the procedures to locate the empty portion of these mirrored incubator racks under the fans with the eggs located next to the now number 2 position in your incubator. So you would push them in. These would go in first on the left side, would go in toward your number 2 position. It has eggs in it, and this would go in on the right. And this would keep our empties underneath the fans. And this method of loading a partial set keeps us at an even airflow through the egg mass. Sometimes I'll go in and I'll do crossbar temps and I'll go get to looking, and the partial set may only be on one side of the incubator. And this can cause a imbalance to your temperature from side to side. And if the partial set is less than half, 75, 60 for Super J, the next set should be set an hour early. So to compensate for that heat loss, we would go ahead and set early to make up for those eggs that we've lost some of our heat on. We make that other set. Talk a little bit about single stage partial setting. We always fill the racks up with the ECU toward the ECU, and we also try to balance the Platinum incubator, balance the load on either side as equally as possible. We usually try to balance this diagonally, left to right, and to ensure we get a balanced machine. Full racks are to be placed adjacent to the ECU, excuse me, and then empty racks again to the outside wall. So if this would say this machine picture here was a P60, we would make sure we had an empty rack placed here as well, or P120. You always keep an empty on the outside to help with air distribution. When you leave this side empty, the air will just come right underneath this outside rack, and air won't get deflected up through the egg. So always push your racks to the outside with an empty one in this place, and it'll secure your airflow. And you want to avoid sets that are less than half the capacity of the machine. I've had to do this. I mean, we all, you have a multiple scenario of different ways of setting. Of course, we'd want to set earlier, and usually typically for chickens or turkeys either, but for chickens at 10 days, I would probably want to raise my profile a couple of tenths after 10 days to just keep the heat load up and keep those embryos on track. And for turkeys after 14 days, I would, and ducks, I would probably want to run a couple of tenths warmer to finish out that cycle, just to keep my heat up, keep my embryos on time. Talk a little bit about transfer time. So we have a holiday, employees are off. Multi-stage incubation, there's less flexibility in general because if we remove the eggs early, there goes our incubator for our other sets being made. If we leave them in too late, we can cause some overheating. And with ovo injection, you should always consider, you have to make sure that you don't hinder that process, that your embryo is the right size for that injection. Some flexibility in that. Single stage machines, there is some flexibility to your transfer time, without the ovo injection. And again, we left that in this slide as well, because you always have to consider that, the size of your embryo that's getting the injection. You just don't want to hinder that process. But single stage, when I was a hatchery manager on turkeys, we would sometimes, it's 25 days for turkeys. We would transfer maybe up to 23 days sometimes without any interference to our hatch or anything like that, and to allow our staffing not to, they could be off on transfer days as well. But again, the multi-stage is a little bit more specific, and single stage does have some flexibility. So I'm going to move a little bit here. We're going to talk with dealing with egg age. Some of the things, if the egg age increases because of our skip sets, you want to run your egg storage rooms at a cooler temperature. This helps keep our fertility up, a little bit more viable embryo whenever we do run a cooler temperature in our egg room. And we want to set our older eggs earlier than usual. So, for single stage incubation, we could set it, 2 to 4 hours earlier. I see many things, many adjustments that a lot of you all are doing with your older eggs to compensate for that, the draggy hatch toward the end, because they tend to be a little bit more draggy. And then the sides treatment can be implemented for eggs stored longer than 10 days. I know Henry Coles has talked a lot about the Spies treatment, and we're pretty excited. Jamesway has now, we now have a new Spies machine, and we're just starting to get this machine out. And I just want to review some of the things with this. Some of the things about this new machine: it's a P30 hatcher cabinet, or it's the same size as a standard P40 incubator machine. It has a powered exhaust, so we can help cool that machine down. I know a lot of you that are using your regular incubators, your platinum incubators, or another empty machine. You have to push the eggs back into the egg room to get them cooled down in a timely manner. This machine, you'll be able to cool it down within the cabinet. It has standard doors without windows. It has 6 heating elements. So we decided to go without any, with the layered cooling or layered heating that we have with our piping, but we're going to actually be using heating elements in this machine. Part of this reason is that all 6 layers of the piping now is water cooled for quick cooling. So we want to be able, that's always kind of been a hindrance, is after the Spies process has taken place, you've always had to have staff there to remove those eggs on time. And with this machine, you'll be able to cool the machine down, get it cooled back off quickly after the treatment, and hold the eggs until staffing can be there to remove the eggs out, and you can start the process. Another thing about this machine, it could be easily managed within an egg room. A lot of you, it's probably one of the last areas in a lot of hatcheries that we have room left. But this could be utilized in that room. Could really be set up in any room, but it is available, and it also has a specific Spies profile. Some of the platinum profiles, only goes down to 70 degrees, but this machine will be able to take it on down to 65, ever how much you want to cool it on down. So it does have will have a specific way to do that with this new machine and software along with it. Of course, with Spies treatment, there's no need to turn the egg, so you won't have to run air to this machine, and no air lines, no humidity, and so anyway, it's a great new thing that's come out, and hope you can think about it, consider it. But I think this is really going to be the way to go. I've seen more interest, I think, in all my years of being in the industry in Spies than I have this year. Now, whether it's just been the climate we're in with the with COVID and things like that, but or with delays or things like that. Of course, the primary breeders have always had an interest in Spies, and most of them do it. But now we're seeing more and more commercial companies taking this in, seeing the benefits of it, seeing the hatch they recover. So I think it's something that should always be considered in your hatchery. We'll look a little bit about ventilation systems. We had talked a couple of months ago on ventilation, but the time for to check out our ventilation is spring and fall. We want to do this before before we actually enter winter or summer, whenever we have a bigger demand on our heating or cooling. So the best time to have a certified contractor come in, do an annual preseason checkup for what, if you're using Aon, if you're using Train equipment, Lennox, any of those brands, you really should have a certified contractor that knows how the equipment operates, come in and check the equipment over and know that you're getting ready, that equipment is ready for the winter season, the cooling or summer, spring, summer, going into when you'll need additional cooling. I think I said for additional heating in the fall and for additional cooling in the spring going into summer. So that's the best time to do this. Also, I like to see that to check your thermostat settings, to check the calibration on these. And also, if you have rooms on schedules, you also want to make sure that scheduling, you know, some hatcheries will, when the service rooms aren't being used on off days, weekends, you'll change your schedule for that, maybe to have it run at you know, where it's not less demand on the system. So it's good to check your schedules, make sure that they're going to line up with the time change and different things that are going on within your hatchery. It's a good time to tighten all electrical connections. Just go through your equipment, make sure everything's tight. You know, I also, when I managed the hatchery, every 3 months, we would go through our control panels on our incubators and tighten all of our electrical connections, make sure they were tight. They just have a tendency to, I guess from the vibration or just overall heating and cooling, they have a tendency to loosen, and you can get some arcing, some machine just eradication in the way it operates. Just some, so it's always good to do that, especially some of your control sensors, thermostats, things like that. It's a good time to make sure all these electrical connections are tight. Lubricate any moving parts, check your pulleys on your rooftop units, if you don't have direct drive, things like that, just to make sure that everything is operating smoothly, tight. And check the controls of the system. Kind of already looked at some of our thermostat settings calibration, but again, it is a great time twice a year, at least every 6 months, to at least check all these controls, make sure they're working, make sure your pressure controls are reading correctly, and just to check it out. For heating specific areas for this time of year, we would want to check all our gas connections, gas pressure, our burner is at the combustible, and our heat exchanger for efficiency, make sure our heat exchangers aren't cracked. We don't want to get into a blizzard and find out that you know, it's not going to be able to produce enough heat for us. So you know, it's a good time to do that. And for cooling specific, for those of you south of the equator, you know, you would want to clean your evaporator and condenser coils, make sure you're ready to go into the cooling season as well. So these are just a few things that we can look at to make sure our ventilation is up to snuff and ready to go, and to get us through this time of year. For those of you in the colder climates, we should have a maintenance plan for the building and equipment when a winter storm is imminent and are damaging cold temperature expected. You know, and a response and a contingency plan for this. What if you lose heat to the building or a room? What are your plans for that? Another thing, what if a fire protection sprinkler pipe freezes and bursts? Is your maintenance guy or the manager the only one knows where that main line comes in and how to turn the water off? You know, these are things that just to be prepared for, and you know, when we enter this season. And do you have areas susceptible to freeze? You know, did it freeze there last year? Do we need to put some heat tape on certain areas or things like that to prevent freezing? How are you going to monitor these, and what steps are you going to take should the temperature become dangerously low? Again, just some steps to have for cold weather planning. And we want to identify and align resources. Some of them is, to keep a close eye on the weather. I hope you don't get this much snow, although I've been some places north, I know you get a lot of snow. You need a qualified contractor to move snow and ice from the roof, not only out on the chicken and turkey houses, but we also, at times the snow gets so deep on top of our buildings that we need to have a way to remove this. Your emergency generator, is your fuel topped off? Has it been serviced recently? I had an instance when I managed a hatchery. We lost power for a week, and so my generator would run about 2 days on a full tank. And so when I called the company to tell them I need gas or to need diesel fuel, they said, we're shut down. We can't pump fuel. So it was so what was my next step? I had to go to the next town over from us and found a supplier there that was able to come and top us off every 2 days so that we wouldn't run out of fuel and we could keep on running our hatchery without incident. So just something to think about if you would ever run into an emergency to where you would lose power for, say, a week. Or more than what your supply handles. The delivery vehicles, we want to check those fluids, make sure they're up to snuff. They can still make your deliveries and get your chicks and birds out on time. Fuel supplies, we mentioned, for all these critical operations, we want to make sure that we have enough on hand to cover us for this. Snow removal services for your parking lot, ensure you access the property. Some of the larger companies, they have their own snow removal. And also staffing. I know, again, incidents I had at my hatchery, we had a pretty deep snow and the snow plows weren't plowing the roads. We had a hatch. So me and one other guy had a 4-wheel drive. So we just went out and picked up staff. Some of them had to meet us at the end of the road, but we had a plan in place to get our staff in as much as we could to get the birds serviced. And, again, it's another area that needs checked on, and which we talked about last week, critical parts. Now's a good time to make sure your critical parts are on hand. So that if the delivery services get backed up or can't get you a critical part when you need it, you have that spare part on hand and able to use and keep your equipment running like it should. I think I know it's been a little quick today, but I think that sort of covers everything. And I'm going to Dr. Bramwell back on.
Yeah, thank you, Philip. Very good. I know this is a timely thing. We hear this pretty much every year. Is like, okay, a lot of people are making sets and sometimes, or skip sets, sometimes multiple, once, twice, 3 times, depending on where you're at in the world and what things are coming up. We know with multi-stage, whenever we do any sort of skip set or miss set at all, there's a period of time before we can assume that our machine is back functioning normally. What would you say? Like you told us how to make those changes, but how long after that do we really say, hey, our machine is back stable?
It's usually once you get into the 6th position and get those eggs all full, the next set when it comes up is typically when you would find your adjustment would go back to normal. So really, once you get all 6 sets through, that skip set has gone out and it's 6th set goes out, and then your next set, then it'll probably 24 hours later be very close to normal at that time.
So then, but we would probably still want to monitor a little bit closer because,
Yes.
all the eggs that are in there, we've made adjustments and they're not going to be perfectly adjusted.
Right.
So we still have embryos a little bit different that are affecting, but continue
Yes.
to monitor.
Yeah. I think, routinely, if you're doing your crossbars once a week or whatever, you would just continue to do that and monitor till the machine recovers and stabilizes back where it needs to be.
Yeah. Yeah. The multi-stage, because like you're saying, it requires all the other eggs in there to help each other. And so when we make a change, it takes a while sometimes to make
Sure.
that adjustment.
Yeah.
So if somebody was doing a lot of skip setting in multiple machines, I mean, what would your preference be? Is to continue to do that, or maybe start skipping machines completely, moving them all into one and skipping machines, and that way gives you, would you recommend that if
Yes.
possible?
Yes. I think the best efficiency for that multi-stage machine is to run it full. So
Mhm.
as you and I'll see some hatcheries actually move some eggs around just to sort of get their machine efficient. It's a good opportunity to get that machine that's empty. Check over the maintenance to make sure it's running properly, gaskets and things like that while it's empty, and give you that opportunity.
Yeah. And I've been to some hatcheries, particularly recently, that seem to be setting a little bit short right now. And instead of
Right.
setting machines short, they're actually just setting machines down. But like you said, every
Yeah.
time you do that, you've got to start moving eggs.
Right.
But I
Yeah.
think that is probably, if possible, the best scenario, because you allow all the machines to run full as they're supposed to run.
Sure.
Kind of gives you the best, more predictable results, I would say.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just from this presentation here, you kind of see that the single stage is a lot more forgiving in a lot of ways. Time setting,
Sure.
skipping, stuff like that. But even in
Yeah.
our single stage, you talked about the different organization or placement of eggs in that in those buggies and the
hmm
uniforming. Can you talk a little bit about that, and how the ventilation, really more detail, how the ventilation works and why that is important to kind of mirror our misses
Yeah.
on both sides?
Well, what we're kind of trying to do is keep that machine as consistent as we can. So if we have I've been to hatcheries where they might set 4 racks on one side empty and 4 racks on the other side full. It just creates an imbalance on the machine, and the air doesn't get delivered throughout the machine and get our evenly temperature throughout the machine as it does whenever we can arrange the eggs diagonally, empty to the outside, moving forward, moving inward to our full buggies. Again, I've seen hatcheries not put an empty buggy in the outside, but again, very disruptive to your airflow. Your air will just short circuit, go underneath your buggy with eggs in it, and that's why we recommend to get the best performance out of that machine when it is partially set, to put an empty rack on the outside to deflect that air up through the eggs.
Well, and if we think about it, I mean, I think as a hatchery manager, it's important to understand how whatever machine we have, how that air is moving
Mm-hmm.
within the cabinet, and knowing that it's going to move in the path of least resistance. So if you create
Right.
a gap somewhere that's going to allow the air to move there, it's not going to go through the eggs. And
That's
I think
that.
that helps you visualize, if you can visualize it, how to set eggs and why we do some of the things we do. So when you put a buggy in a miss buggy, you would keep it turning, would
Yes.
keep flats in it, all that stuff to kind of mimic.
Well, we don't recommend putting the flats in there. We keep the buggy empty. The main thing is the floor of that machine. What we see with the flats is they'll just usually get kicked up and jam
Yeah,
that rack, and you get a turn failure. But yeah,
yeah.
that's basically the reason. And even in multi-stage, it's we recommend not putting empty flats in
Yeah.
those empty spots.
Yeah,
Good
you
point,
can see them if
Tiffany.
they don't have the weight of the eggs on the rack, then
Yeah,
as turning, that you have more chance of them kind of popping off.
yeah.
Um, okay, question: if you've got a single stage ACI, would you still recommend setting eggs an hour earlier on a partial set with the single stage ACI?
Good question. Yes, I would adjust my set time on those to make up for, especially toward the end, is where we see in single stage that it's lost some of its heat in the embryo. So that's a good point. Yes, we would set an hour early on those.
Okay, so treat that matter. So
Yeah.
okay, well, apparently you did a really good job explaining it. I think there's a very nice article written by Phillip as well that you will get on this that further details this, which is particularly more important in our multi-stage when we go into this season. And I think that's going to be very helpful for those that that have our single stage or our multi-stage equipment that deal with us every year. And I would just recommend that if you can take advantage of this time when you're forced to do partial sets for whatever, empty some machines out, get them cleaned out, do your preventative maintenance that we talk about on those machines while they're empty, that you can take advantage of this opportunity to keep your incubators running more normally, but also you can get in your machines and start doing some of the preventative work that needs to be done, replacing parts and checking things. So we've seen that in some hatcheries where they take this time of year and kind of go through a scenario where they're emptying machines out and doing those necessary.
It's a great time to do that. When the machine's empty, because again, multi-stage, you just don't have that opportunity as we do in single stage for our maintenance and things without eggs being present. And any type of fan maintenance, it's difficult in a multi-stage, because the fans are required to run all the time. It's just difficult to do your measurements, make sure you got your correct spacing. It's a good time to do that. Take them down and make sure they're good to go.
And that might take a little bit more planning to plan to have machines empty and moving, but I think it's probably a good time to take advantage of that. So, well, thank you, Phillip. A little bit shorter webinar today. It's a very timely topic, and I think Phillip covered it very well. We get questions on this a lot every year, so I think you did a great job covering that. If you do have any additional questions, those that watch this later or that we weren't able to get to, just email us at webinars@jamesway.com, and we can address those after that and help you individually. Everybody's got very specific needs in their hatcheries. And so sometimes we have to do a little bit more creative on things, but the basics of what Phillip talked about is really what's been proven to work during this time of season. So thank you, Phillip, and thank you all for participating in our webinar series, and continue to go back to look at our old webinars. We've got a lot of them online, a lot of very good topics that people might be in need of at different times in their operations. And then also, look to see what we have coming up. We've got continue with our webinar series. Has been very successful, and it's thanks to y'all for joining and participating with us. So with that, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing y'all at our next edition.
Okay.
Bye.
See you later.